Hey,
Hello.
everybody, we missed you, and we're so sorry that we haven't been around for the last few months.
It's been a little crazy
Yes,
in our lives, so
but the main thing we were doing this month of May was it's spring turkey season here in Pennsylvania, so we
we
went
were
out
we were busy
in the woods,
being ninjas
yes,
and
and stalking the birds, and which
mhm.
Christina got one. She got a nice tom that we're going to have mounted in a full strut. It was so much fun.
We'll show you guys that one when we get them out back.
Yep. So anyway, we were just thinking that we had some of our fans coming up to us and asking, where have we been? And we felt really bad. So we've also been following a lot of the news lately with what's happened in England with this bombing, and also what happened just yesterday in Egypt where Coptic Christians were slaughtered. And Christina can update us with that story right now.
Yes, so on yesterday, May 27th in Egypt, there was a shooting, another jihadi shooting on buses carrying Coptic Christians in Egypt,
Including children.
including children. There were at least 28 people, including children, were killed. Many more injured. It's a pretty gruesome story, but this is kind of got us pissed off.
Yeah, royally.
Yeah.
At the situation where these radical Islamic nutcases that call themselves ISIS and Al Qaeda, who are Orthodox Muslims, they're not radicals, they're Orthodox, because the Orthodox Muslims are instructed by the Prophet to kill infidels.
That's right.
So this brings us to the situation with the United States and the criticisms that have been faced by our president with his taking no prisoners attitude with regard to terrorism. And for us as citizens, what we have been reminded of as responsible American citizens, the importance of the Second Amendment.
Absolutely.
And the situation that we are as citizens of a free nation and as a free people, necessarily, our situation of freedom necessitates that we be prepared to take responsibility for our own safety.
And for the safety of those around us.
Exactly. And that's the problem with a lot of people who are good people, like you Christians, who have this mentality of turning the other cheek, which has nothing to do with being a pacifist. It basically means you don't take your aggressions out on innocent people. The commandment was do not murder. It wasn't do not kill.
Yes. Actually, the Bible quote to turn the other cheek is actually a common misquoting, actually. Originally, I don't have the text in front of me, but we think that to turn the other cheek means to, just let it go and let it slide. Actually, it means like turn the other cheek once and, forgive it. But if they do it again, then all bets are off.
You're to defend yourself.
Everything's off the table. Exactly.
Right. Which is why Jesus did say to sell your cloak and buy a sword. He was under no delusion that evil existed, and there are occasions when you have to fight your way out of an awful situation. And as responsible Christians, being our brother's keeper and being ready to lay down our life for the friends, which there is no greater love, that means that not only are you responsible for your safety as an individual by being armed, but also the innocents around you who could also be victims of violence. And that those are the people that you should be typifying and exemplifying and embodying God's love. You would be ready to deal with. You may lay down your life, and that might save someone else's life. So in the course of what we've been going through, and I just gave a talk this morning to a group where, in particular, women tend to be very, very passive about their safety. We have this attitude of being damsels in distress, and somebody else is responsible for our safety. And that is nothing farther from the truth. If you are a devout Christian and you are thinking about the safety and security of your family, you owe no greater responsibility to anyone but to God to make certain that that safety is in real time. In other words, you're the one who is going to be the difference between danger and vulnerability. In other words, ladies, you can't do helpless. You'll worry your man to death. Every time he's got to go away or do something, he's worried about whether or not you're going to be safe, you and your children. Now for you children, because I'm a mother, and I hope a good one, and as a good mother, I know that sometimes my husband's not going to be around. We live in a very far off and far out in the hinterlands area where it's likely that the police are not going to get here for at least 45 minutes at 3 o'clock in the morning. Easily. And that's if I'm lucky. And if there's a threat to my home and family, by the time the officers get here, I'm a chalk outline. And I'm under no delusion about that. So if you're really serious about the welfare of your family and the welfare of your neighbor, then you really should think clearly about what that takes. And if you're not, you really need to understand how important it is to be an armed citizen, a peacefully armed citizen, but ready to take care of situations nonetheless. Now, when we're talking about this situation with ISIS and Islamic terror, no other time in history has this been more relevant than with the threat of ISIS. Absolutely. Hitting all these soft targets and deciding that you as an infidel aren't worth living. So the idea of Sharia law rearing its ugly head in this country is something that we have to really address right now. I think Christine has some thought on this that is worth hearing.
Yeah. I mean, with everything that's going on, it's now more than ever that, we need to be vigilant and not be, so, naive about the reality. I mean, just look at, everyone says this, but just look at Sweden, and all the atrocities happening there where women are constantly being gang raped by people that can't even, go out of their houses,
without being with someone.
And this is a huge concern for women, especially. Well, it's a concern for both men and women. But I mean, you have cases where, our safety is on the line. And, when you have a country where the government gives zero craps about whether if you die or for the sake of cultural diversity. Right. I mean, give me a break. I mean, you guys, you gotta, if you're not already awake to this, I mean, you gotta realize that this is, okay, you guys know my story. We are, survivors. We're survivors. And so we're awake to the fact that not everything is hunky-dory and that there are bad people who don't play by our rules, who only listen to force and who only listen. And this is the thing with the Second Amendment. It's your right to defend your life. I mean,
exactly. It's not, you're not a bad person
for carrying or for wanting to do that. I mean, honestly, I can't think of any action that is less let me reword that. If you choose not to defend yourself, you're leaving yourself obviously vulnerable, but you are, people
irresponsible to me.
It's irresponsible, but how much do you not care about yourself to the point where you, for the sake of not offending somebody, that you would allow your life to be taken?
Yeah, or you would allow yourself to be violated. I mean,
or
you're talking
anything.
about this, and here's the situation. There are certain governmental entities in these countries where they have permitted unrestricted immigration of people from areas that are questionable as far as the treatment, especially the treatment of women, is concerned. And yet they'll turn a blind eye to the atrocities of rape and assault and all these other violations of women. And then the women are told in these countries like Sweden, like Finland, that it's your problem, that's your fault because you don't understand the cultural diversity of these people, and this is a culture you should understand.
Screw that to the wall.
Exactly. Is this what they're telling you after you've been raped and violated and you're in the hospital dealing with the injuries?
What worse thing that you can possibly tell somebody? I mean,
and yet these men who are doing this, surrounding girls gang raping her, egging them on, taking turns, and then they're told, and then they're the ones getting the slap on the wrist, and they're being told less than that and being asked to what, because we as civilized people have to understand their culture.
Fuck that.
Exactly.
I'm sorry.
I'm sorry, but we're not making apologies.
It ain't no culture to be a barbarian.
Exactly.
You're an animal, and you should be treated as such.
As an animal. So when we have rogue animals at large, what do we do using our heads? We defend ourselves. Now, whatever that takes, and in America, thank God for this nation and the founders that had the wherewithal to give us the right to defend our lives with guns, because they knew what tyranny was like back then, that we here in this country can stand up as civilized people and actually as loving people and defend what God has given us, which is our life. And in the case of womanhood, is the ability and the blessing of giving life to others.
Absolutely.
Would you as men want to see your wives, sisters, daughters, mothers compromised in a way that is the treasure of your relationship? I think not. So this idea of Sharia law, and it's interesting, honey bunny, who is it in American culture that is advocating and insisting that Americans look at Sharia law? Guess who it is? The feminists. The ones who want empowerment of women.
Which is so counterproductive. I can't understand their thinking, probably because there's something wrong with radical feminism. I know, because I used to be one of them. Now, I'm not saying that I never went to a psychologist, because I know that I would have been further mentally screwed up.
Right.
I would just be medicated, and that would have been
told that you're a good person.
Yeah, and not able to confront myself. But anyways, side note, they are such hypocrites. Oh my goodness!
Don't just push that button.
This is a huge button for me.
Yeah.
So feminism hates men. Or, I'm sorry, I can't follow my hand. They hate men for being more privileged.
So-called.
They hate, that they are sexually oppressed, so they can't get any liberation. So they work to achieve that. They also hate sexual oppression in the form of rape, so they try to work against that.
Right.
But they love, for some reason, this Muslim ideology and the Sharia law, getting even more further to that, where men,
Christian men are the enemy.
What more? Exactly. This is the thing, because I remember a while ago reading the story about this middle schooler girl in Canada. Oh. And she was at a dance, and there's a boy there who was an immigrant from the Middle East, and he kept sexually harassing her. And the school did nothing to defend her. Nope. The parents sued, and
they chastised the girl, in other words, for not being culturally sensitive to the fact that she was being sexually harassed with the threat of rape.
They were just saying, that's not a big deal, and to just brush it off. But
not with my daughter.
The hypocrisy is that it doesn't matter to feminists about it does matter, because if it's a white man who decides to rape you and he only gets a slap on the wrist for his actions, they're all up in arms and pissed off. But as soon as a immigrant, especially a Middle Eastern or Muslim immigrant, does that,
where it's culturally acceptable to exploit women that way,
they don't care. And they blame, and it's really not even about the rights of women. It's about hating men and especially hating white
Christian men.
Exactly.
Not about the privilege so much as it is the fact that they are Christian white men and Christian black men who are willing to defend their women, who truly want to empower their women by training them to shoot, training them to take the responsibility for their family, so that they are relieved of that, not just so that they can be relieved of it, but really good alpha males, alpha men. And I use Christians as an example because they understand the sanctity of life.
Right.
And they are the ones who, more than any other demographic, and I would say social religious demographic, want to see women empowered in a way that is healthy and in a way that is safe. and is not a way that's a threat to society.
Or oppress, and this is a huge common misconception, that Christianity naturally oppresses women. If you actually
go back and read the Quran, you'll know different.
I know. But here's the thing, is that the way that God designed women and their entire existence, according to the Bible, is such an easier way of life than
that's right.
fighting, than trying to prove it wrong. The thing is that, small point, feminism tries to prove the point that women are not equal to men. They say that women are not equal to men, so therefore they're trying to fight for equality. However, Genesis 1:27, God created humanity. He created them to be made equal, men and women. He created them
to be equal.
He made them equally.
Here's
the thing. Why feminism is a lie.
Fraud.
It's trying to say that women are not equal to men. They were already created equal as men. And the thing is that it doesn't matter the way you're treated. Your life is still, I have 2 dogs, let's say. And one dog I treat pretty nicely, like normal. The other dog I kick it. Does it mean that the dog that I kicked is less valuable for its life? No, I'm just the dogs are still equal.
Value.
The dog can run away because I kick it, but
it's an analogy that we were trying to explain, because the whole flawed premise of feminism and this whole need to look at Sharia law as being some sort of equalizer is that the flawed premise is that from the get-go, women have a problem being equal to men. And it's the grandest lie. Do you ladies that are feminists, do you really hate yourself that much?
That's while we were talking.
Yep, it came into your head. That's why
I picked
it up.
Yeah. Why do feminists always settle for this whole Sharia law bullshit where they're going to be more miserable than they ever were in the first place?
Like being owned like a dog?
You must really dislike yourself, honey. And you deserve better. Let me tell you.
You deserve a good man who's going to look at you and say, baby, I'm going to treat you like the daughter of God you are.
No, don't do that. No, I'm hideous. Why would you even look at me right now?
Oh, you're just trying to oppress me.
You need to shut up.
Oh, rape and look at yourself. Oh, marriage is rape. Don't you know that?
Oh my gosh. It's like, you girls need to think highly
of yourselves and see yourselves as
not in a way that is arrogant, but just realize,
narcissism. No,
be grateful.
Yet you have a life that God gave you, and that you are worthy of love. Hello,
everyone deserves happiness,
right? You don't deserve to be owned by somebody. You don't deserve to be considered half of a citizen, so that in a court of law, that your testimony is worth half of that of a man. You don't deserve to have your daughters genitally mutilated upon birth so that they can't have any sort of pleasure in a married life.
You don't deserve to have 4 men try to testify to your rape,
who probably
4 male witnesses,
right,
who will never admit to the fact that even if there were 4 male witnesses, whichever, they're not going to admit that. Here's the thing, and this is going back to the Second Amendment.
Right.
If we can defend ourselves and say no to these freaking creeps, maniacs, who are trying to take the liberties away from us, that we deserve the happiness, that we deserve a life, life, liberty, the pursuit of happiness.
Exactly.
Without the Second Amendment, none of the other amendments are going to work. It's not going to work, and you can basically kiss your life goodbye, because that's what you're going to get.
Right. And understand, people, when we talk about the Second Amendment in this context, what we're talking about is the fact that the government cannot infringe upon the right, a God-given right, of the citizens to keep and bear arms. The reason why the framers saw that as being necessary wasn't just to avoid tyranny, but it was, in essence and in an internal spiritual sense, that your life is so precious that you should be allowed the right, God-given right, to use deadly force in preserving your life, liberty, and happiness, and those around you that you love, from the evils of the devil. And don't sit there and look at me and tell me that there is no devil that doesn't exist, because if you can go out there and shoot up a school bus full of children, go to a concert and blow up a bunch of children, you are definitely demonic and a tool of Satan. God gave us the right to have life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. That was a preamble in our Constitution in America, but not only that, they got that from the Bible. There's nothing that is inconsistent in the Bible that wasn't in the documents of our founding fathers, our 10 amendments. Mm-hmm. Look to that and understand that that's what God's plan was for us.
That's right. That sounds pretty good,
doesn't it? You want to go throw that away for something that's going to make you a slave? Not a good choice. Not a good life choice. Not a good career decision.
Yeah, because honestly, if a government says that, okay, let's say someone is trying to own you, and you say, I'm not a slave, but your government recognizes you as a slave. If there is no God, then what else can you do to try and prove to someone that you shouldn't be owned?
Exactly. So in this nation that we call America, in summing it up, we are so lucky that in God we trust. And that was the founding premise of our nation. Yeah. So those of you who think that the rights that we have were given by a government and that a government can take them away, not on this land, sweetheart.
It's people.
It's the people, and God gave them to you. Mm-hmm. Use them. Exercise them. Know that your life is that precious. Not just to your family, friends, and loved ones, but they're that precious to God.
That's right.
So don't forget that.
Mm-hmm. And trust God.
Trust me.
Because in the end, all He wants is the best for you.
And that's what we want to leave you with. So until our next broadcast of the dynamic
mother-daughter
duo, we'll be back with all kinds of good stuff. So until then, God bless you guys. Have a great holiday this weekend.
Yes. Happy Memorial Day. Thank you to our veterans who made it possible that we can be here in freedom and that we don't have to live in a hellhole like the Middle East.
Right. And in fear of our lives.
Absolutely.
Thank you, veterans.
Thank you so much.
Grateful. And God bless all of you. We'll talk to you next time. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Bye.